And welcome back. Now, as Christmas approaches, we're all having to think about who we can see and to what extent. But for people with hearing loss, get-togethers are all the more difficult. As many as 12 million people in the UK have some form of hearing loss. And a new survey has revealed the effect it has on their lives. 68%, or just over two-thirds, say they've actively avoided social situations. Nearly a quarter, 24%, say it leaves them feeling frustrated, while 1 in 10 people feel depressed. Well, let's talk more about this with Kim Leadbeater from the Connection Coalition. It's part of the Jo Cox Foundation, which Kim helped set up in memory of her sister, the late MP. Also joining us is Lawrence Thorogood, who has hearing loss as a result of his time in the army. Well, let's start with you, Lawrence. I mean, tell us first of all about your hearing problems.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Firstly, I got my hearing loss around 7 years ago when I was 18. It was during a live firing exercise for the army, and when I first encountered it, I couldn't hear anything for around a week, just my heartbeat and some slight tinnitus as well. And when it came back, I've lost most of my hearing in my left ear, and I'm partially deaf in my right ear, as well as the severe tinnitus that I've got as well.
Lawrence, that must have been quite frightening, especially when you were able to hear before, suddenly to your life changing forever. How did that make you feel? What did you have to do differently?
I mean, yeah, it was a big shock to the system. Obviously, being young as well, being only 18, I had no one to really speak to about it, because what I came to a realization of, that it was an older person's thing. It was, you know, I worry about that later, but I'm 18 and I have it, so it was very difficult, yeah.
And does it make a difference then who you're with, what sort of environment you're in, when you're trying to be understood and understand others?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I've got a very supportive friendship group that I can talk to and I'm comfortable talking to about my hearing loss and tinnitus. But when I do go out in social situations, unfortunately, it does get quite exhausting, having to sort of say pardon all the time, and you know, it's and when people give up on speaking to you, it's kind of it's quite upsetting. Yeah.
Well, of course it is, and it must be hugely frustrating. And I imagine the COVID rules, that we're having to wear masks, the fact it's probably very hard to lip read, you're not able to get close to people, that must have made things all the more difficult.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I rely heavily a lot on face-to-face conversation, so I just tend to ask people to speak with clarity and not like overly shout, because that doesn't help anything. You have to speak with clarity, and not just shout in my ear, because that does nothing.
Of course it does. And talk to me a little bit about Christmas, because presumably you're going to be seeing friends and family. Do you have to make any adjustments because of your hearing problems?
I wouldn't say so, because it's been around 7 years now, and people sort of have catered for me now, as well as my partner's mum as well. She's got hearing loss as well, so it's kind of also comforting knowing that there's someone there that at Christmas that I can talk to about it as well.
Well, Lawrence, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you and walk in your shoes. Lawrence Thorogood, we're going to leave you there for now, because I'm going to turn to Kim now. We just heard from Lawrence. He's a young man and a great example of how this doesn't just affect the elderly, and, of course, a reminder to us all that hearing loss should not be underestimated.
Absolutely, and well done to Lawrence for speaking so honestly and so openly about some of the issues that he faces as a result of his hearing loss. I think one of the first things to do with the issue of hearing loss is to get rid of the stigma. So many people sadly do suffer and struggle to hear, that it's really important that we have a conversation about it. And that's where it links in very much to the work that we've done through the Jo Cox Foundation on loneliness, because there's also a stigma attached to feeling lonely and isolated. So the connection there between people who are struggling to hear and the risk of them feeling isolated and lonely is why that I'm really pleased to be working with Specsavers and through the work of the Jo Cox Foundation on this really important initiative.
And of course that isolation, that loneliness that we heard also from Lawrence, I mean, it's made worse, isn't it, because of the pandemic, the fact we can't get together with our loved ones.
Absolutely. It's been such a challenging year on so many levels. Sadly, so many people facing loss, and not just for loss of loved ones for so many people, but for all of us, that loss of human connection, that loss of contact that we desperately need as human beings. And that's why we set up the Connection Coalition. And that's why we're doing the Great Winter Get Together, which is all about reaching out to people during the next month or so and staying connected within our communities, but having an awareness of those people who we might not necessarily think about as feeling lonely, like people who might be struggling with their hearing. So the Great Winter Get Together is really about encouraging human connections, reaching out to our neighbours, people who might be forgotten about at this time of year. So there's loads of ways of doing that, whether it's phone calls or whether it's writing letters, but also the second call to action with the work that we're doing with Specsavers is, if you are struggling with your hearing, get your hearing checked, get it tested. This is a problem, but there are solutions, and we can all work on those solutions together.
Absolutely. Kim Leadbeater, some great advice there. Thank you very much. The brother of the man who detonated the Manchester Arena bomb has admitted his role in the attack for the first time.